Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is the UX design for marketplaces, how to successfully build trust into the user journey. And I'm joined with Bec Faye today.
Hi everyone.
And just to get started, I want to tell you that you can send in all your questions that you might have. I just told the people who were early that you can send that in on the right-hand side. And don't be shy, send those questions throughout the entire webinar, and either we will jump into them as we go or answer them in the end. And we have prepared a downloadable. It's a UX design guide for marketplaces, which we will send to you after the webinar. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And here I am, and I am Emil Andersson, and I'm the marketing manager here at Pseudo. And no, it's not me who has 17 years of experience, but it is Pseudo, and we work with content moderation. We help companies grow with trust through AI and human content moderation. We were founded in 2002, hence the 17 years experience. And today we have a global coverage with offices in 6 different locations around the world. And today I am joined by the expert herself, the UI, UX designer, Bec Faye. Bec, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. As Emil mentioned, it's 9 p.m. here in Sydney, so I'm hoping I get through all of this without losing my train of thought, but bear with me. Yeah, my name's Bec Faye, so I'm a marketplace optimization and growth specialist these days, and I've got 12 years experience in UX, UI design. I've come in through working with a lot of tech companies, tech startups, and over the last few years have been really specializing in marketplaces, and that really come about by me founding a platform called the Wholesome Dollar, which is a marketplace for marketplaces, and that basically connects people who want to earn a flexible income with marketplaces who allow people to earn a flexible income. And that actually led me to having a lot of conversations with all these different marketplaces and platforms of all shapes and sizes, and realized that they had a lot of similar challenges. And that's where I really, really fell in love with actually working with marketplaces with their growth. So that's how that all kind of come about. And you can see down there, I work with quite a few different platforms, and that's just kind of an example. Over the last few years, I've been really working on this marketplace framework, which allows me to jump in and actually work with marketplaces, whether they're in the build stage or the grow phase, to actually help them to optimize their platform for the best chance of success. And today I'm really excited because we get to be talking about pillar number 5, which is your trust and credibility. So that's a little bit about me. So I guess now it's a matter of just really jumping into the content that we have on today. So in this session today, I'll basically be sharing with you things like the trust principles that you can really use to guide as you start building the trust in your marketplace, and also provide you with a bit of an actionable framework that's designed to really help you as you try and troubleshoot and trying to get creative in order to find new ways to optimize your marketplace for trust. Because it is quite different for all the different types of marketplaces out there. And I know we've got quite a good range of different types of marketplaces as far as structure and things like that. So it's a matter of being creative and adapting this framework for your type of marketplace. And I'm also going to be walking you through a lot of really great examples as to how to build trust based on what everybody else is doing out there in the market at the moment. And what I'm really hoping is by the end of this presentation that you'll be really feeling super inspired, that you'll be ready to take action as far as really starting to think about your marketplace in a new way as far as building trust. And also have a bit of a plan as to how you can dive in and start optimizing your marketplace for that trust and growth that you really want. So let's get into it. So how do you optimize your marketplace for trust? And how I like to really think about this is your marketplace, you need to start building trust in these 4 key areas. There's building trust in the platform itself. There's building trust in the people, so both your supply and your demand. There's building trust in the product or service that is actually being transacted through your marketplace. And there's also the trust in the actual experience that somebody will go through as they use your platform. And there are 7 principles of trust that really allow you to start to start thinking about your platform in that new way, which will help you to really optimize. And that's things like trust is earned over time and can be broken in an instant. You also have the fact that trust can be transferable. Now, each of these I'll be going through in more detail with examples, so we'll come back to these ones. Trust can also be bought, trust through certainty, trust through integrity, and trust through humanity. And then, of course, trust by being there. And we'll go into these in a second. You'll have to excuse me, I'm going to go through things quite fast because we do have a lot to get through. So hopefully I'm not going too fast for you all anyway. So let's really see how these 7 principles of trust really work in action across the user journey. So first of all, trust, we're going to start from where you start building trust once people start arriving onto your platform. But it is worthwhile noting that your trust building actually really happens before they even get to your platform, in the way that they hear about your platform for the very first time. That could be through word of mouth, it could be through ads, it could be through a blogger or an influencer, and they all have different levels of trust that get carried across into your experiences as well. So that's worthwhile noting. So once somebody arrives onto your platform, they might arrive onto your homepage, they might arrive onto one of your other pages, like a listing detail page or a landing page for suppliers. However they manage to find their way into your marketplace, it's really a matter of giving them a really great first impression. And this is where what you really want to do is show that you are absolutely serious about what you're doing, show that you're trustworthy, and this is the point where you start beginning to build that confidence in your brand and the offering. This is all about really building that trust in your platform. And then from here, you want to, that whole first impression, what I'm going to do here is actually break down a homepage example. And we'll see how this particular marketplace has done that. Now, Trusted is a marketplace for babysitters and nannies and so on. And as you can imagine, marketplaces have different levels of risk associated with them. And the more risk that a certain marketplace has associated with it, the more you really need to start balancing that out with more and more trust. Now, kids being one of our most precious things in the world, you really want to make sure that if somebody else is going to be looking after your children, you have a really high level of trust associated with that. And that's what these guys have done. You can see from their brand, you can see that they've got Trusted in the name, they've got a clean UI, they've also included all these logos here as well of places that they've been shown on. So they're essentially borrowing that trust from other brands. You can see that they've also got the phone number up here, which is always visible, meaning that they're always available for help whenever they need to. You can see transparency around pricing, around the different experience levels that are available on the platform. And what I love about this is that they really start to address the fears and objections that parents might have at this point in time. So whether it's just a babysitter who is somebody just down the road, whether it's an experienced nanny, or whether you're looking at kind of full-time, highly experienced nannies, that they offer that full level experience. And they very proudly present that on this homepage. They include faces, so you've got a lot of the personal aspect of it as well, which helps to build trust. You've got they're showing reviews up front. They've selected these specific examples because they have high reviews. They have a lot of them as well. So they've really carefully selected what they're showing on the homepage here. The words that they're using as well, so the copywriting that they've done here, you can see that they're dropping things like peace of mind, amazing childcare, monitor, stay engaged. You've got the tools that really show that they really understand the concerns that parents go through. You've got things like the high quality care, customer support, comprehensive insurance, and so on. So this is a really, really great example of a homepage that really, really talks to trust the whole way through it. We've got more safety features, we've got testimonials. So there really is a lot here to look at, and I definitely recommend having a look at that on your when you can as well, because it is a great example. Now, after somebody has arrived on your site, they then typically will go to have a look into what kind of results they can expect to see on your marketplace. By this I mean search results essentially, and what kind of supply do you offer. Now, of course, your marketplace depends on the structure of your marketplace, whether it's something that they can just openly browse, whether you're making recommendations. There's a few different ways that this can all work. But essentially, once they do start visualizing what your supplier looks like. You really want to be able to show them that you're serious, trustworthy, and that you offer a whole heap of relevant and really interesting inventory. This is the stage where essentially they've gone through, for argument's sake, they've gone through and done a quick search or a browse to see what is on offer in your platform, and this is where you start building trust in your actual offering. From here, what you want to do is really wow them with your inventory, and this is where Airbnb do quite a great job. They've got this really wonderful imagery. It's very bright, it's very professional looking, it's very interesting. What you really want to do here is really invoke that, wow, I didn't know I could get that. And this is a really great way to really stand out. It's all about putting your best foot forward and having really surfacing the best listings on your homepage, and also at the top of your listings. Having polished, impressive listing cards is really useful as well, and showing really relevant information that's applicable to your particular users. The more relevant, the better. Obviously, if they're going to see something that's of no interest to them, and there's nothing there in their location or nothing there that meets their needs, they're not necessarily going to come back to your platform again. So you really want to adapt to that. And for here, what we want to look at doing is really starting to present high quality, relevant listings. And this is where we can look at doing things like curating really carefully to ensure that you have the high quality results at the top. And you really want to keep out things that might be offensive or might be not the right type of thing that they're looking for, things that look scammy and so things like that and so on. So you really want to start filtering out the things that are going to corrupt your marketplace, essentially. Make sure they're not visible, but keep the really high quality things at the top and at the center, the things that are most applicable. And this is where you have things like algorithms that can essentially help you to really do this. Now, Emil, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I would like to come in and just mention that, like, the key of getting good quality listings is, of course, to have good moderation processes in place from the beginning, so that you make sure that things like scam, counterfeits, profanities, whatever it might be, bad language, stays off your site even before it goes live. And even when you have done that, to really ensure the level of the inventory or the listings that you have on your site, the next step would still be to present this, like you mentioned, Bec. How do you make sure that the best of the best is shown on the first, even the home page in some scenarios, in first result pages, in recommended products pages, whatever it might be. And one way of doing this is to sort of tag or rank your ads or images. And we actually helped one of our clients once to sort of tag their images based on quality, like quality 1 to 5. And in this way, they managed to always ensure that the best, the creme de la creme, the best of the best were always presented on their marketplace. And this is a really good way to ensure not only high quality, but also the best trust impression from the beginning.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really great idea. From there, what you want to do as well is ensure that you have a really well-designed listing card that includes trust features. And a lot of this will come down to really understanding your users, understanding what's useful to them, what is it going to impress them, what is it that's going to help them to make a better decision. And this is where things like trust through integrity. So this is all about having simple, clean, useful content that's really based on what the user needs. Having that high quality, accurate imagery, having things like spelling and grammar and having that correct as well shows that somebody cares about that particular listing. If it's full of spelling mistakes and you've got weird capital letters in odd places, it tends to show a little bit of lack of care from either the platform or the actual supplier. And therefore that can just kind of, it just taints the brand just that little bit and kind of puts that little bit of a doubt in their mind. Then you've also got things like how can you build certainty through these particular listings. So things like free delivery or booking instantly in the case of these cars. That's really helpful for them to know at this first glance. Also the fact that they respond within an hour, for example. that there is really useful and helps people to make a really solid decision, knowing that if I am interested in working with this particular person, I'm going to get that really quick result that I need. I'm going to get that response that I need. And finding things in your marketplace that can work similar to this, so that in the case of the car, you have the all-star host. So obviously there are certain marks this particular host has hit essentially to get that label, and that helps to build that trust and certainty within the brand and within this particular listing. Now going back to the trust is transferable option, this basically means that ratings, social proof, these are all things that can be transferred to over time to your platform. The more ratings obviously we have, the better. The higher the ratings, the better. And the social proof of the fact that, hey, this car has taken 32 trips. This person here has been got 112 jobs booked, for example. So we can tell by that, and you can see the little treatments that they've used here where they've highlighted the 112 and really highlighting the fact that that's a really awesome number. So therefore, this person is really reliable to work with. So once you move into the decision phase, so this is essentially where they've browsed through the listing results essentially that may be in whatever form they happen to be on your particular marketplace. And then they typically will come through to something like a listing detail page. And at this point, it's about us helping them to really narrow down, shortlist, and make a decision on what is it that they actually want to achieve and transact with. And this is all about starting to build more and more trust in the actual individual suppliers and their specific listings. So we've moved from where we're building trust in the platform right through now where we're really focused on building trust with the suppliers and their specific listings. And this is where things like ensuring that your listing detail page has really accurate information, has impressive photos, realistic photos, and making sure that if somebody, for example, is selling a camera, you want to make sure that there's a photo of the actual camera on the listing so people see exactly what they're getting. And rather than, for example, somebody grabbing something off Google Images and using that instead, it's not an accurate representation of what that particular product is, which can damage the trust as well because it means the buyer doesn't know what they're actually getting. From there, we can look at things like, again, coming back to that certainty. Providing quality information that really matters, really understanding your users and what is it that they need to know in order to make a decision. What are their fears, their objections, their questions that they might have, and how can we actually start to answer those things within the listing page? And then, yeah, go for it.
Super. So we actually did a study. I think it's 2 years ago. It was a user search study or survey that we did. It was a qualitative study. And we looked at basically, or one of the tasks was to look at the description or like the quality of information within a listing. And what we saw, I need to double check the numbers so I get them right, but what we saw is that 20% would buy the product in a listing with poor description. And 73% of them said that they may not even return to that site just for poor description in an ad. And compare that to 56% and 37% for a good description. So it can really be costly for you as a marketplace to not have good, informative, like high quality information in each ad. And this study really showed that. And I don't know, did you touch on accurate listings yet, or can I say a word there as well?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, jump into it.
Super. So, because this also goes into, in the same study we did, it was about relevancy. We had our survey, the people doing the survey, they got the task to search for iPhone 6, I think at the time, and to ensure that you have accurate listings, you need to make sure that you have both the quality on top, but also have the categorization in place. Because what they saw, all of them, 100% of all survey participants saw that when searching for iPhone 6, they weren't presented with only iPhone 6 on their first result page. They were presented with everything from cases to earphones to whatever iCloud storage, whatever you might have. And this is a real key thing in actually having relevancy and accurate listings, present that to the user. So get the quality right and also have the categories right, so that the user can find them.
Yeah, very, very important. Big part of the marketplace is matchmaking. So if you can't actually match them up with the right things, yeah, you're not doing it right, essentially. Very good, thank you. From there, we look at things like really reassuring our users and screening of the quality of our users on both sides of your marketplace. Now, depending on the industry you're in, there might be different requirements that are relevant to you, like for example, trades or again, the babysitting. There are very specific requirements around working with children, licensing, that type of thing. And in this case, Turo, where you can rent the cars from your next door neighbours, essentially. Now they actually use many internal and external data points in order to actually screen their users who apply for either driving a car or for actually listing their car. Some of the data points include things like driving records, credit scores, email verification, phone verification, and things like that. Now they've actually integrated with 20 odd data vendors into their booking and listing flow, which allow them to actually screen users in real time. And this is actually really important, because if you're lending somebody your car, you want to make sure that you're confident that obviously that they can drive the car, that they have a good driving record and things like that. Now Turo actually turned down 15% of people who actually try to apply to use their service, which is quite an interesting number, but it does mean that they can be confident in 99.9% of the time that they are having drivers that are actually reliable enough to actually drive somebody else's car. Now, Airbnb and Stanford actually did a combined research project recently, and what they found was that people are much more willing to trust people who are similar to them. So in the case of where we're looking at marketplaces, it's really interesting. So on the flip side of that is the more different somebody is, the less likely we are to actually trust them. So let's look at some examples around that. Now, Urban Sitter is another babysitting app or babysitting marketplace. And what they've actually realized that if they onboard a new parent into their platform, what they do is actually collect the details of schools and social groups, mothers groups, sporting and church groups. And what that allows them to do is actually to connect the dots between babysitters, parents, and parents actually recommending and using the particular babysitters on the platform. And what they've found is that if somebody within their own network actually refer a babysitter, they're 2.5 times more likely to book. And that's really interesting, because it basically means that these groups, when you have these groups and things in common, they generally have very similar values and things that they believe in, and things that really mean that typically that referral is worth a lot more. And what else that came out of this research was the fact that if there were less than 3 reviews on a particular listing on Airbnb, for example, nothing really changed in that case. So people who were similar to them still gained more trust, and people who were different to them, obviously they trusted them less. But the more reviews that were actually on each listing, they actually found that if there were 10 or more, this actually changed everything. And it was all about really the idea of that high reputation beats high similarity. Now, what that means for you as a marketplace is if you have reviews, particularly if you're in the earlier stages of building up the reviews per listing, you really want to get it to the point where you have at least 10 reviews on each listing, because what that'll do is actually really help to really open up and overcome the social bias that's naturally built into us, as per this research that was found. So I thought that was really interesting. And so what does that mean for us? So what we want to do is make sure that you have a really well-designed reputation system in your platform, and you want to make sure you're communicating it clearly. So this is things like the screening and authenticating user information to ensure, and then reassuring your users that you've done your due diligence. So I guess it's one thing actually screening your users out, but that may not be the best on your platform, but also clearly communicating how strict your qualifications are, I guess, for having somebody actually enabled and allowed onto your platform. So by communicating that, it allows your other users to feel a lot more confident in what you offer. Now, another interesting thing to be aware of as well is around the reviewing system. Now, Airbnb learnt this the hard way back quite a while ago, but the whole idea that, yes, it was important to get reviews from the host and from the guest, but if they released the review too early, they actually found that the results or the review of the second person was actually skewed based on the original review, because they actually got to see what the other person was saying about them. So being aware of that, and in the case of Airbnb, how they've got around that is actually ensuring that each person reviews before it's released onto the platform. And they actually have an interesting way of really staggering out some emails to ensure that they're collecting the data, and then when they actually release the review, so it's worthwhile next time you do book a property through Airbnb, just to notice the emails that actually come out as they try and prompt you to get that review back. Now, yeah, so be aware of review bias, which is what we've just spoken about, and also highlighting positive behavior. So things like fast response time and last time that they're online, those type of little signals allow users to trust that this person may get back to them really quickly, this person's active within this marketplace. There are a lot of marketplaces where you will see people who might not have been active for quite a while, and that can certainly put a bit of a question mark in somebody's mind if they're looking at transacting, but they're not quite sure if they're going to get a response back. Now what we do is, I guess it's all about building trust in the people, as we spoke about. We want to make sure that people are who they say they are. You want to make sure that the people who are applying to be within your marketplace are actually the people that you want in your marketplace. And you want to make sure that they're qualified to be there as well. And then communicating this so users have some trust in that. Now, Emil, was there anything you wanted to add to that particular slide?
Yes. So one of the things that says on the slide as well is create confidence by verifying users. And I know that verifying users is a tremendous challenge. There are customers of ours who come and talk about this with us once every other month, it feels like. So I know the challenge is there, and a potential solution to this could of course be to try to verify, do background checks. You could look at maybe credit scores like you have in China in some cities. You can look at EIDs. In Sweden we have something called bank ID. You can work with local authorities. So there are probably ways to work with verifying users, but in many scenarios this is very complex, and in some countries and markets this may not really work at all. And the question is, can this work at scale? Can it work efficiently to actually do this? So what I think is important is to remember that verifying users, like what it really is, like what we don't want to do is maybe not to exclude users from using a platform. So for example, if you have a poor credit score in a city in China, is it really the best idea to exclude that person from using your services because it's verified as a bad user based on a credit score? Instead, I think that you should look at verifying users more as, is this user real? And more as tools to sort of confirm that this user is a real user and it's not a bot or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the way we go about it at Pseudo is instead of we look more at behaviors and actions more so than verifying a user. And by that I mean, if a user's behavior is suspicious and we block multiple content from that user, we dig down into that user profile and ultimately block them if they shouldn't be part of the marketplace. And I think this is another maybe a better way to go about it, to exclude sort of any biases that you might have and exclude people because they are not verified in the right way. To always look at behaviors, because even earlier behavior can have been good, but that doesn't mean that you should stop looking at stop moderating the behaviors. Because one of the most common a very common scam tactic is called Trojan horse, and basically what that is that a scammer acts as a legitimate user at first. They do have legitimate content, they do complete transactions, and then they start with their scamming tactics. So just because they have done a good behavior before doesn't mean that they will do later on. So always monitor behavior of the users instead. It could be a solution to verifying.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, I might move on because I'm just conscious of time. So I know we've got a few classified type marketplace people in the audience today as well. So I thought I would have a look at a few different examples in that space. Now what's really interesting, so this is the Gumtree website in Australia. And what's really interesting with Gumtree, so it's one of the main marketplaces that I tend to use, and it's I noticed that the brand reputation really helps to set the tone of the user experience. And this is true for both success stories, but also stories of scams as well. Now Gumtree, I've definitely had a lot of positive experiences, but I have had negative experiences as well, and that's always kind of at the back of my mind. But of course, there are all the kind of safety and security things that we all know as users of marketplaces that we need to be aware of. But what's interesting though is the whole idea of how do you actually start, particularly in marketplaces where you have secondhand goods that are being sold, how do you actually help to build the trust in the actual seller themselves? Now, what I found interesting, and I don't know the answer to this, and I'd love to talk to somebody from Gumtree to really understand, but they don't seem to use ratings or reviews or insurances or guarantees in that particular platform. What they do though, which they do, if I click through to the next screen, mention PayPal, so they've implemented the ability to use PayPal. But interestingly, on the app view, again, there isn't really any bring back that. There's no reviews, there's no ratings and things like that. The only real indication I have about the user is how many listings they have. And from what I can tell, they're actually active listings rather than a history of transactions. And I guess that could be partially to do with the fact that the transactions are actually done offline and not online. And I've also got the indication of how long that particular member has been a member for. But apart from that, there's not a whole lot I can really go off. Now, if we look at something like Carousel, the Carousel here, we can see when they are last active, we can see some likes, we can see in this particular case, this person hasn't been responsive, which is very helpful. But we can see that they've got 5 stars and they've got six reviews, and of course the reviews that go along. So that's really interesting. So they actually include those extra factors. And so we know Gumtree's been around for quite a while. Carousel is quite a new contender, but they're doing really, really well, particularly in the Asian market. Ignore that. This isn't actually Carousel. This is Shopee. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but we'll go with that. And again, you can see the star rating. You can see how many is being sold. We can see that it's authentic. It's got 7-day returns. It's got the free shipping. They've got the guarantee as well. So there are all these little indications that help us to kind of gradually tick up ticks of trust essentially in that experience. And we can also see here again when they were last active, their chat response rate, and how many products and things like that. So that you can see how the comparison between the two, how you can be feeling a lot more trust and understanding exactly more about that seller in that case. Now, people trust those that they know, like, and admire. Now, this is really interesting because there's, I think, some really interesting things here, which I haven't really seen. I haven't seen this done much in any marketplaces yet, but I think there's a real potential here. In the whole idea, we've got this whole society now where influencers have quite a strong hold, whether it's bloggers in a particular community, whether it's influencers that people look up to. The whole idea of what would happen if you actually started integrating a whole idea that trust is transferable. So if an influencer is trusting this particular brand, this particular item, if we can see that actually within a marketplace, say on a listing detail page, it's relevant, what would that look like, and how would that actually transfer trust into the marketplace? What if we were to use a hashtag type strategy in order to embed social proof from social media directly into listing pages? There's some really interesting things there that I think could be interesting to explore. And then there's the idea of how can you actually start connecting the dots between empowering family and friends, helping them to really spread the word and get visible within their community. Now this example, this is something that I found very recently, and I thought this was really, really interesting. I'm dying to get in and actually test this one out. This is a tool called Write Message. And what they actually allow you to do is actually present, so in the case of this particular testimonial at the bottom, I'm actually seeing that testimonial on my website because I've actually come to this website. I've been referred to by Pat Flynn's website. Now, what's really, really interesting about that, so Pat Flynn being a podcaster, he's talked about this particular brand. I've come through to a landing page and I'm now seeing testimonials and case studies and basically him talking about this particular brand all over the Write Message website. Now, what that means basically is for your marketplace, you could actually really start monitoring and personalizing your experience on your marketplace for each user based on who's referred them to the website, whether they've come from a particular influencer, in which case you could have them and their testimonial all over the website. And you can, this goes as far as having email campaigns and all sorts as well. You can do some really, really interesting stuff by personalizing in ways I didn't even know was possible until the last week or so, but I thought that was really, really interesting to share because it really allows you to really start personalizing that social proof throughout your experience. And this is, I guess, being prepared as well that you need to build trust over time. Trust is earned. And people don't typically purchase or transact the very first time that they're on your platform. So you will need to build trust over time. And that means having strategies in place, things like retargeting, nurturing emails, and things like that. Really understanding how you can start solving problems and really putting yourself in their shoes. Just conscious of time, I'm going to go really fast through these next few, but basically things like how can you give guarantees. So in this case of Car Next Door, which is the Australian car sharing platform, they give a guarantee that you're going to earn at least $2,000 in the first 12 months. So that's certainly helps to earn trust as far as the supply side. Offer insurance, which will really help to overcome any fear and risk associated. Now, Airbnb obviously being a prime example of this, have got their guarantee, their insurance, and so that's insurance can be really good in that it can really create a stickiness as well, and encouraging suppliers to stay with you and to not take their business off your marketplace once they've found their customers, because you're giving that value out of the insurance. And once you do have the insurance offer there, making sure it's prominent and you're communicating that throughout your journey where it's really applicable for your users. Now, trust across the conversion section. So this is basically where you really want to start reassuring users at that critical moment where they're about to transact. So things like providing very clear, transparent pricing, reiterating the reviews, being really, really clear about what it is that they're booking, things like you're not going to be charged at this particular point in time, this person's going to respond within an hour, really setting those expectations up. And really bringing forward a lot of stuff I've already spoken about before into the actual checkout experience. And encouraging a relationship between users. So Airbnb know that if the guest actually enters in a message to the host is more likely to actually accept that booking. This really helps to start finding similarities and helping to set expectations for both parties. Then we have things like providing that transparency and confidence throughout the checking out process again. So things like this is a rare find, this place is usually booked, self-check-in is available, the cancellation policy, making sure those things are really front and center where they matter. And again, providing transparency and building confidence. This is another car sharing website where they actually talk about how many verified users that they have, their vetting system, the fraud detection team, and so on. So again, really prominently talking about these features. The exchange, this is where somebody actually exchanges a car, for example, or they're exchanging a good, or they're delivering a good as well. We have on-platform chat, which is also very useful for helping to during that exchange process, and helps us to really understand what's happening within the marketplace. It helps us to monitor what's going on between users and making sure that everything is as it should be, and there's no kind of security risk or any risk to any particular user. And it also really allows you to, as a platform, to know what's happening between users, as I said, and helps to build trust.
And
Then you've got
can jump in on the previous slide real quickly. This on-platform chat it's very good. You showed the Airbnb example as well, how they really encourage they really help to initiate the conversation between both buyer and seller, and getting that started and having an on-platform chat that you can control, in the sense that you can make sure that you can moderate it to make sure that there's no scammers trying to get off your site, because another thing the scammers wants to do is to get the conversation away from you, and to add that extra level of trust and safety, especially to that final step in the conversion stage. It's a really smart idea to keep the discussion, keep the conversation on your platform, under your roof, because then you can control what's happening, and you can protect your users, both buyers and sellers, throughout the process.
Yeah, that's a really great point. There's things like creating more trust through certainty. So in the fact of delivering a particular goods, for example, things like GPS tracking can obviously be really useful, and we've seen the success of that through all the delivery platforms that are out there currently. You've got the idea of, again, creating more trust through certainty. So in the case of a car sharing app, and how do you create that certainty, create a seamless experience from start to finish? How do you make sure that when somebody actually gets out there to the car to pick up the keys, that they can actually get into the car? The last thing you want is somebody standing on the side of the road outside of this car that they've paid for, or and about to drive, but they can't actually get in to get the keys. So making sure you have customer service available for them when they need it. Making sure that the people on both sides are really friendly and really great to deal with. And again, setting those clear expectations from the beginning. And post-transaction, so this is after the transaction's happened. And again, this journey does look quite different depending on the type of marketplace you're offering. But how can you actually start thinking about how do you strengthen positivity towards the platform and really begin that trust cycle? And it's all about building that trust and helping them to really continue their experience as far as trust and credibility with your platform. So things like really closing the feedback loop by collecting reviews. So for example, after an Airbnb stay, making sure you're getting that review back from about that stay. And even if it means jumping on the phone, particularly in the early days of a marketplace, you might need to actually get on the phone and actually check in with the user to see how their experience has gone, and actually get that review in writing so you can get it there on your platform, because we know that those reviews are really, really critical for you. And this is an example of Uber and how they actually, they've realized that by asking for feedback during a ride, actually allows them to get more feedback, because if they're having, once they get out of the car, they're off onto their next thing, whatever they're doing, so they're busy. So the chances of actually getting a proper review is kind of minimal. But if they can actually get the review during the trip, when they're sitting in the car, they know the user actually is sitting still anyway, and they're not really doing a whole lot of the time. It means that it's a really great opportunity to get a proper review from them, at least as far as how that ride is going at the time. And how do you then start re-engaging your users and really moving them up your value ladder? So for example, if somebody has booked a stay with Airbnb, Airbnb then in future emails actually go on to say, hey, how would you like to earn money towards your upcoming trip? Hey, why not list your house on Airbnb while you're taking a trip you've just booked? Which is quite clever. It's really about understanding that user journey and really starting to kind of capitalize on that. And then of course, what kind of experiences can you have at that location that you're going to? So there's much room for being really creative in these kind of spaces. But if you think about those 7 trust principles we've spoken about, it's a really great way of starting to apply those. And this is another example of AliExpress, and they've actually, once the order's been shipped, they're starting to say, hey, you might also like these things based on what we know about you. Okay, so that was, we've gone through heaps and heaps there in the last half an hour or 40 minutes or so. So how are you feeling after all of that? Hopefully feeling pretty excited about it all and ready to take some action, because there really is a lot there, I think. So I'll leave that all with you to kind of process, but I guess I guess we jump over now to if there are any questions.
Yes, we have received a couple of questions. So the others who haven't sent anything yet, here's the opportunity. So send those questions in as we jump into the first one here. It's from Barbara, and I believe this might be when I was talking about that we have helped companies tag quality. And in that scenario, it was images on a scale 1 to 5. So the question is, how do you analyze the quality of the listing? What is the process for this? So if I take on answering this,
Yeah, go for it.
of course, the amazing answer will always be that it depends for each marketplace. So what is a quality listing for you? What is it that your users want and expect? So you would have to look at parameters like, let's say it's a listing for cars. You want to know the mileage. You want to know how old it is. You want to know information about it. You want to know price, of course. There's so many different parameters that you want to know. And then you have image. What is a good image according to your users? And that is only information that you can get from your own data, really. But you have to decide what are the parameters that you define as a good listing. And then you would have to, in this case that we helped our clients, we did this throughout the moderation process. We manually tagged a good quality image throughout the process. So we gave it a 1, a 5, a 4, or 3. You get the drill. But if you would do that for listings, you would define what are the parameters that are important, what is the way we want this listing should be presented to be top quality, and then you would tag the entire listing in that sort of way. I hope that semi answers your question, Barbara. And Bec, if you have any other take on this, feel free to add to it.
Yeah, thanks. I think you've pretty much covered that really well. I think, yeah, as you mentioned, I think it just really comes down to really understanding your marketplace, your users, what's important to them, and then, yeah, really scaling it accordingly.
Yeah. Super. Let's move on to the next one. And like I said, keep on sending those questions. Bec, how would you present the safety measures a marketplace has in place to the end user, and in which phase?
Look, I think it's a really great question. I think, again, for me, it always comes back to really that user journey, really understanding at what points in that user journey do fears start to come up in a user's mind, and really understanding where those kind of questions and the objections kind of come up in their minds as well. Once you can really understand how a user's feeling at that point in time, then you can really start to address those. So I'm trying to think of an example. So for example, somebody's come through, they're at the checkout point, and they might be just kind of a little bit hesitant about putting their credit card in, for example. So that's where you'd obviously be identifying that your website's secure, that you have your any warranties or guarantees and things like that, if insurance is applicable, really addressing those kind of concerns at that particular point in time. But again, yeah, it just comes back to that user journey, understanding the users and how they're feeling at that particular point in time, and really addressing those needs essentially.
Yeah, and I know that some of our clients have sort of, it might be done even in a more efficient way, but they have sort of a user safety or user trust type of page where they might talk about what actions they take to prevent scam or to have smooth transactions and safe transactions, etc. And it could also be a way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of platforms do utilize that page, and I think it can be really effective, particularly if somebody is starting to feel a little bit hesitant about it, or they're fairly new to your type of platform. Many marketplaces out there are disruptive in one way, shape, or form, so to actually really reassure users the way that you think about trust and safety and security and things like that, I think that can be very valuable.
Super. Let's move on. We have another question from Azar. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Excuse me if not. how can we improve user trust if, as a classified site, we don't have any user ratings, reviews, and escrow payment? Any suggestions?
So how can you build trust? Okay.
Requires an entire consultancy session, huh?
Sorry, what was that last bit?
No, nothing.
Okay. Look, it's always tough because you need to start somewhere. I think if possible, the reviews and ratings do work really well, and it is something particularly even across e-commerce and classifieds and marketplaces and the sharing economy, all of those reviews have shown to really increase conversions, and by having that kind of information there is really, really helpful. But you need to start somewhere. So that's something definitely worthwhile exploring further. I guess if there's a reason why you can't do those things, I guess it's a matter of, again, really coming back to what's important to your users, really understanding where those fear points are, where those the risk points are in that journey, and trying to figure out, all right, how can you actually overcome that? And yeah, whether it's possible to introduce some kind of guarantee or some kind of just something in the messaging that will really help them to feel at ease. I think, yeah, it really just comes down to your individual marketplace. And ideally, you do want to get back to those reviews. So I think that's a really big part. Hope that kind of answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does. And one of the things that we talked about before is, of course, the quality of the inventory that you have.
Yeah,
Get
definitely.
that spot on, and the relevancy and accuracy towards your users. I would say that is the foundation to even start building trust.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Let's move on to the next one then. From the questions are just pouring in. I don't know how long we can keep on going, but I'm happy to see that most of you stay. So Karen is asking, what's the single most important UX feature you can implement for user trust?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Yeah, really good question. Look, I think there's just so many different aspects. I think one of the things that can really hurt you initially is if your website tends to be buggy and people can't actually do what they want to do. That is going to really hurt not only your trust, but your conversions and the way somebody views your website. I know that there was a marketplace that I went to use the other day, and I was trying to use it on my mobile phone, and I just couldn't use it on my phone. It just wouldn't allow me to. And the funny thing was that the particular marketplace was something that you would, as a user, use it on your phone 90% of the time. So the fact that I couldn't actually have a good experience in actually even completing the task, regardless of how committed I was to it, I just physically couldn't complete the task. So I think making sure that the actual product works on the devices that your users are going to be using it on is really critical. And that to me is, I think, probably one of the really big ones, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah, good. Like I said, the questions keep on going. Shall we answer two more, and then what we can do, Bec, is that we can answer these in sort of a blog or article form and send to everyone afterwards, and then you all get the answers that you want.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do that.
Okay, so second last one then. It's let's see. Yeah, here Barbara asks, what would be the first step to start with reviews in platform that never had reviews before?
Yeah, great question. I think the first place to start is start looking at your process of once the transaction's gone through, how can you actually create a strategy or a system where you can start collecting those reviews. Now that might be a technical feature, so it might be like an email going out with a form, things like that. But you don't need to make it too complicated initially. Even just things like the transaction goes through, you pick up the phone, you call that person, you say, hey, how was your experience? Just kind of checking in and getting a bit of a testimonial / review there and then over the phone. taking that down, recording that, and then translating that into text. And that can be a way of getting started. And that on the phone can actually be quite a really, really effective way of actually starting to build trust with those particular customers. And it's a great opportunity to get some really great feedback, particularly if you are earlier on in the marketplace journey, or you just haven't had that feedback before. It'll really give you some really great learnings at the same time. So that's probably where I'd start.
That's a good point, because just having that initial conversation with your actual users, especially suppliers, I imagine, it helps build that trust that they are involved in the process of how to improve and how to do changes. So
definitely, yeah,
build stronger relationships with your users.
Yeah.
All right, the final one then we have here. It's if a user's trust is broken, can there be any means via UX to fix it?
I guess it depends on how that trust has been broken and how severe. I think generally, yes, is that hopefully is always a way of fixing it. I like to be hopeful. I think in the case of if that trust has been broken because something has gone wrong in the experience, and if there's an opportunity to actually touch base with that particular user, that's actually a really great opportunity to really actually grow from that and actually rebuild that trust stronger than it was before. As an example, this is in the marketplace, but I used to run an e-commerce website quite a while ago, and there was a particular time where I didn't have the product that that somebody had purchased from me, and just my inventory just got stuffed up on the website. And I had to email her back saying, hey, sorry, I know you just ordered this product, but unfortunately I don't have any stock of it. And then just put a really nice note in there and just really went above and beyond to try and fix this situation. And the response and the communication that I had backwards and forwards with that particular customer, they actually become a heaps better customer in the long run. Even though I'd let them down initially, I'd actually, by having that conversation, allowed us to really build up that relationship essentially beyond what it was before. So that's why I like to kind of think about trust where possible, is that if something goes wrong, take it as an opportunity to really make it better, and it's a possibility to kind of reach out to them or vice versa and really fix that.
Yeah, we received one more that I kind of want to answer as well, so I'll take on that, and it's from Totsapol. How should we prevent a bully? How should we prevent bully reviews? Example, spamming of bad reviews. And here is something that we at Pseudo can help with. What you can do is you can work with moderation to remove bad language, spammy type of reviews, harassing reviews, or whatever it might be. And in that way, you can work both with filters, AI, and human moderators to actually go through the reviews. And that's one side of reviews. The other side that you can also consider is to only allow users who actually purchase the product to be allowed to leave a review. In this sense, you make sure that it's at least somewhat a real review, if you understand what I mean. That someone who has actually done the transaction with this user is the only one who has the right to give a review. And in that sense, you can get rid of people who's trying to boost their own reviews, inviting their friends to just review me with 5 stars, but also hopefully reduce the amounts of people who wants to bring someone down as well. So there are 2 ways to go about it. But feel free to reach out if you want to learn more on how we can help with keeping reviews appropriate. I think we'll round off there. And like I said, we have more questions. I love that you send in so many questions, you guys. So what we will do is that we will answer all of your questions, and then we will create a blog post around this and send it to all of you once we've had the time to sit down and answer them carefully.
Yeah, sounds good. Excellent.
Next slide, yeah. So before we round off, just keep an eye in your email for that free UX guide downloadable that I mentioned very early on. It will be coming after this webinar, I believe, from Bec.
Yes,
And
it will.
we also have recorded this webinar. So if you want to revisit any areas, we will just edit the recording a little bit, make it perfect for you, and then we'll send that out in the coming days.
Very good. And yeah, look, I'm really, really passionate about this stuff and really want to see you guys get some really great results. So one of the things that I'm looking at doing is actually giving away some marketplace funnel reviews, where I'll be reviewing some marketplaces and helping you to actually craft a plan about how you actually optimize your marketplace and those core funnels, which is really a lot around trust and a couple of other factors as well. So keep an eye on your email for details about that. I also do a regular free masterclass around the 8 pillars of marketplace success, that framework that I put up at the very beginning. So I will be mentioning just a bit more about how you can learn more about the 8 pillars. So, and then Emil, I think the last one is for you.
Yeah, exactly. So to really round this off now, then we have another upcoming webinar in June. So make sure to check that out when we send out the invitations. This time we will we have invited a filter expert, and we will learn how to build accurate filters to catch bad content and in turn optimize your inventory. And here I also want to note that if there's any specific areas that you're struggling with building filters for, or that you want to build filters for, feel free to reach out to me, and we try to address as relevant issues for you as possible in that webinar as well. But it will be sometime mid-June, so keep an eye out for the invitation. And finally, here are some contact details to both of us. You can reach me at emil.andersson@besedo.com, or you learn more about Pseudo at besedo.com. Also, my LinkedIn profile is there, so check me out. And then we have Bec at becfaye.com, and her website is marketplaceplaybook.com, and also her LinkedIn there. So I want to thank you all for participating, and I hope to see you next time.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.